Hi friends, this is Brent Huras, and I'm a productivity coach. And in this video, we're going to discuss the campaign of the self. And what I hope to do is to take the discussion of this topic matter even further than I've ever taken it before in an attempt to answer a few questions that have been in the back of my mind for a long time. So this one is going to be a little bit more of a freewheeling discourse. I'm really excited about it because I like it when it's really structured and when there's a very particular kind of lesson that I want to give. But I also really just enjoy, in a way, hanging out with you and just sharing with you what's occurring to me. And I feel like it's really exciting this way as well. I was listening to Jordan Peterson speak with Joe Rogan on his podcast. And among many other things, they were talking about giving live talks. And I've heard Peterson say this before, but it really hit me this time when he said, you know, when I go on stage, I have a question that I'm working with and I work it out with the audience, and I do it in real time. And so it's actually a discovery that we do together. And he'll really frame these talks as a discussion. He's like, you know, you wouldn't think of it as a discussion when you get on stage and you speak with an audience, but it really is. There's a back and forth. There's a particular quality of silence that he'll find when he listens, or even little, sounds that you might hear. There's sort of a back and forth that he imagines. And in this way, I like to imagine it as a back and forth with you too, as we explore what is a very consequential question, a really central question, and one that I've sort of hinted at and I've made a little progress at, but I haven't really gotten to the bottom of, which is, should you give up on your dreams? Which is the title of this video. Now, I did choose this title on purpose because it's a really sort of bombastic and kind of anti-cultural, countercultural kind of thing to say, but it really is central to what we need to figure out here. When I show up on this YouTube channel and also in the different things I do, whether it's my coaching practice or my TikTok videos recently, I find myself poised rather awkwardly between two opposite paths, like paths that are really like very, very like dialectically opposite from each other. Like, you know, we're either going west or east. Like, you can't go both west and east. It's only one or the other. And that is between the path of spiritual awakening, the path of non-duality, the path of self-realization, and this other one, which is the path of self-growth, self-evolution, of self-actualization. And a little cheat, a little hack that I use is self-actualization, of course, being a very central theme in everything we do here. I use that to mean both things depending on where I'm at. So self-actualization can mean the growth and development of the person, the personhood, and it can also mean the movement beyond personhood. And I guess I can start by saying that when if you really pressed me, if you really, if you really put me in a corner and you said, Brent, which is it? I would say that self-actualization is the movement beyond the self, the movement beyond self-consciousness. And when in spiritual circles, when we discuss topics such as self-realization, it more refers to the capital S self, which is something that is a little bit more difficult to explain, but capital S self is to recognize yourself as everything without any sort of distinction between you and everything else. Just everything, all that is, manifested and unmanifested, above and below, here and there, today and yesterday, everything, you as one of it and not as distinct from it, to realize the entire thing, the entire universe as yourself. That's capital S self, and that's self-realization. There's also a phenomenon that I've noticed that generally, if our priority is only self-growth and self-evolution, so we're talking about productivity and succeeding and making money and this sort of conventional sort of success that we've all come to know and understand. If that's our only priority, then two things happen. One is that on that journey, it tends to be one of mostly friction. So if we're just trying to get our money and trying to get our success, trying to get our fame, trying to get our influence, trying to get promoted, trying to climb the ladder, that journey tends to be one of difficulty and obstacles, and it tends to be a fight. It tends to be an uphill battle. It tends not to be very pleasant, although the little moments of triumph can be so incredibly pleasant that they seem to recontextualize the struggle and make it all worth it. But generally speaking, it's struggle until you triumph. It's struggle for glory. The big emphasis on struggle and effort. And when we get there, when we reach, it tends not to be so fulfilling. It tends to be an empty sort of success where once we get there, it's like, oh, it's great. There's a little party. And then it's like, okay, now what? Now what? Now what? And there's this insatiable looking for something. And so then the way it goes a lot of the time is somebody will go on this path of like just outward success. They'll just go for it and go for it and go for it until they become fed up with that path just on its own. Whether they become fed up with struggle and they never quite reach, or they do reach and find it not to be very fulfilling, eventually somewhere along the way they turn to the path of self-realization, the spiritual path. So the path of awakening could be characterized as waking up out of the campaign of the self. And I spoke about that in 3 videos. Their names are The Campaign of the Self, Productivity Beyond the Campaign of the Self, and Trust in the Creative Impulse. And so I go really, really deep into these concepts, but I'll just summarize them here quickly, which is the campaign of the self is what you think about when you think about you and what needs to be done about you, what needs to be done about your life, what is lacking about you that needs to be fixed or rectified, or what success you need to make in order to prove yourself to either yourself or to somebody else. So whatever puts you between where you are now and where you need to be, in the sense of needing to be somewhere, needing to get something, needing to put conditions in place in order to truly arrive home, in order to truly feel like yourself, in order to truly feel well and satisfied. Whatever is that distance, that gap, we call that the campaign of the self. That's what that is. And so therefore you're on this campaign where you're in a place of, I'm not enough, I'm not doing enough, I'm behind, I lack, I'm unfulfilled, I don't have what I want, this kind of thing. I don't feel secure. I'm insecure in my experience, in my existence. And here's what I need in order to get out of this and get into that. So there's this huge gap. So where I am right now is unacceptable, and where I could be is acceptable, and I must get there. I must get there. And so when I put it like this, it's pretty common sense, and you might listen to that and think like, okay, yeah, that sounds good. This is what's discussed, again, in anything that would be said by Eckhart Tolle. It's implied, not exactly in those words, but by Matt Kahn, you'll get a similar vibe. Any sort of self-realized, there's like Thich Nhat Hanh, he's a good speaker of that, Adyashanti, all these people who have moved beyond the campaign of the self. All these are teachers who do not see any lack of worthiness in themselves and have therefore given themselves permission to find fulfillment now, in the now moment, which is profound. But the big challenge, despite all of this, despite how all of this may sound good, sure sounds good to me, I imagine it sounds good to you too, a decision still needs to be made somewhere along the way about whether or not we are going to step into self-realization. Self-realization, as all the teachers maintain, is available now. But in order to access it, you do it at a price, which is to give up your campaign, to give up your story about yourself. And really, to give up your sense of self. This is a slightly different topic, but I'm going to get on this too, and I'm going to see if we can weave it all together. Even the concept of the self is discovered to be false in the process of spiritual awakening. There's a YouTuber that I found more recently. Her name is Suzanne, and her YouTube name is Suzanne Non-Duality. And she'll post these videos where she'll just sit down in a cemetery, which is cool, it's kind of badass, and she'll discuss her experience of non-duality. And it's amazing. And I've been listening to some of her stuff, and she'll refer to how there never was a self. There just never was a self. And so what does she mean by this? Because it sounds like really kind of crazy and gnarly to talk about, but it's also really common sense. Because if I could invite you right now as you're listening to this, you might say, okay, what is myself? If I were to say, what is yourself in terms of your identity, in terms of who you think you are? What is that? Can you articulate that? Can you write that down? Can you describe it? You might say, well, I'm this and that. Here's my name, here's my address, here's my memories, here's my story, here are my preferences, here's my Myers-Briggs, here's my Enneagram, here's my horoscope, here's my, this and that, all these details about yourself. But all these details, we can take all of them, every single one, your eye color, your lineage, your upbringing. You can take all of that, right, and write it all in a book. All the information, put it in a book, and you can hold that book, and it'll just be a book. It'll just be information. It'll just be data. It won't be what you are. It's just information. And then you might think, well, yeah, but I'm like this physical body. I'm a part of everything. I'm separate from everything. I'm this body. So I'm here. That lamp is over there. This camera's here. 3 distinct objects. But even then, that's not entirely true, because there's a communion of all objects. On one hand, we're all made out of the same subatomic material, right? So it's just different configurations of the same goop, of the same subatomic material. It's not like the camera's here and I'm here as if we're 2 different things. No, we're just like as if you have like a lot of Play-Doh and you take 2 Play-Dohs and make them into 2 different sculptures and then pretend as if they're not the same thing. They both start as the same mound of Play-Doh, and eventually they just all turn back into Play-Doh when you put them back in the cup. So how separate could we really be? And that's to say nothing of the constant exchange, the give and take of the cells coming in and out of existence, being born and dying, all the atoms flickering out of existence, the subatomic particles just flickering in and out of existence. The communion between even just the physical body and everything else, like the air. Like I take all this air, I turn it into my body. At what point does the air become my body? The oxygen in my blood. And at what point does it become, public, like the public good once again? Not really. Thich Nhat Hanh wrote in a chapter of one of his books, he said, I finally realized that the sun is my own heart. It's my own heart. It's my other heart. It's your heart too. It's my heart. So really the sense of being a separate self is just an idea. There's no real evidence for it. There's nothing really to ground it in. Any more than you might look on the surface of the ocean and see a wave. And you look at a wave, it does have some sort of shape and distinction for that moment. It totally does. And you can see it and identify it and pretend like it's its own thing, especially if it's a really high wave. But it's just pretend we play, right? It doesn't mean that it's any different from the ocean. It doesn't mean it's not the ocean. Even if you take a bucket of water out of the ocean and hold it over here and the ocean's down there, it's it doesn't mean this water's not the ocean anymore. It's still the ocean. And so by that logic, all the water in your body is the ocean. You are mostly ocean. And sky. You're part ocean and part sky. So here we are. Okay. We have a body, we put a name on it, we give it an identity, we give it a story, right? And not everybody's willing to do this. So I hesitate at this point, right? Because when I was thinking about this title, should you give up on your dreams? We could say alternatively, should you give up on your story? Should you give up on your sense of identity? Should you become self-realized? It's a really personal decision that we all make. And there are so many deep implications behind this decision. The biggest one is that if we have an identity and if we have a campaign, then we know who we are and we know what we're doing. That's really valuable. And to give that up, it can be really scary. Because if you don't know who you are and if you don't know what you're doing, these are your major orienting principles in the world, it can cause a freak out. So that's why this decision is so personal. And that's why it's never a good idea to really insist that somebody go upon the path of self-realization. It's really something that you're driven to when you feel beckoned to it, which is what I did. There's also a quality about the beckoning of the path of spiritual realization, which is that the beckoning becomes stronger and stronger over time. It's like a vortex. And there's this increasing temptation to further surrender the campaign of the self, the sense of self, the belief in self, the concept of self, little s self in this case. But then every time it comes time to give up on, say, maybe an aspect, or to kind of move through a particular threshold where you're giving up an aspect of who you think you are, there's always fear. There's always a fear membrane that you're pushing through. And there's trust that's required. And the other thing that I've noticed is that there's no guarantee. When we discuss, say, you giving up on your dreams, giving up on your campaign, giving up on your sense of future that you may arrive at that will just make everything good. You may ask, well, what if I'm not motivated to do the things that I want to do anymore? And the truest answer we can give is that nobody knows. Nobody knows what's going to happen to your motivation. I've been reading so much of the Tao Te Ching lately, just going into the verses. And this message keeps surfacing, which is, you can have your own personal thing that you're doing in the world. So you believe you exist as a person, and here's what you're doing, here's your mission, here's your purpose, and you gave it to yourself, and you're doing it. You can have that, or you can surrender all of it and allow yourself to be used as a tool by the Tao, which is to say, allow yourself to be used as a tool by God, or by universal flow, by the creative intelligence of the universe, and put to work that way. What I found in my own experiments is that the more I give up on my dreams, which can be excruciating because I'm extremely attached to them, and they give me a great sense of meaning and purpose and promise. But in these moments where I give them up and release them, I find that if anything, it gives me an increase in energy. Because the campaign of the self is just me trying to funnel energy through an idea that's not working for me. And I'm not able to be really fresh. Because like all these ideas are really old and stale. Like for example, I promised myself one day I'd be a millionaire. And that's a really cultural goal. Like so many young entrepreneurial men, you know, when they're 16, they promise themselves that they will become a millionaire one day. And there is attachment to that as an idea. But it's an old idea, and it's an ego-based idea. Because it wouldn't serve any other function than besides to aggrandize myself and say, oh, like, you know, look at how good I am. Look at what I was able to do. And so if I release it, and there's nothing that I need to do on that level, then I'm free. And with that freedom, I can become like a child again. Spontaneous, open. As I speak to you now, I have more responsibility now than I've ever had before. I have a client roster and I have a group coaching forum. I have a child, family, I have a house. And I maintain all of these. But all of these come from a place of complete choice. There's no obligation at all. There's no sense of have to. There's no sense of ego behind it. I'm doing it from a place of great love. What I also notice is that I'm more free as I've been offloading a sense of campaign of the self to communicate with the world with ever more radical levels of authenticity. For example, making this for you now, this is very personal. And there is a voice that keeps going in my head, which is like, they're not going to like this. They're not going to want to hear it. But in an earlier video, I made this video called how to orient, use this guide to take on 2023. It's just like 2 videos ago from this one, maybe 3. And one of the things that I offered as an idea is to express your interior. That which is most personal to you, that which is most intimate to you, give that up. Stop trying to be something for people. Stop trying to present a face. The other video that I was going to make besides this one was a list of 10 exercises that you can use to get your shit together. And I may still make that because that would be, it's important to learn. It's important to have as a resource. But what we're talking about here, this is the high priority stuff. I need to know, should we give up on our dreams? So, okay, let's really narrow in on this. Let's really figure this out now. Should we give up on our dreams? So first of all, notice the cringe. Notice the immediate refusal to that idea. Notice the part of you that's like, no, my dreams are the most important thing. Without my dreams, how do I have hope? But you have to invert it, right? You have to, in order to see this in its proper light. Hope for what? Because if we're hoping for something, then what does that say about now? It means that we're in a set of circumstances that are not good enough for us. That's a problem. If you're in a situation that you look around and find it to be unacceptable, and therefore you refuse to accept it, then you've decided by default to have an antagonistic relationship with life. And thus we go along this path of difficulty and obstacles, as I was mentioning before. That's what you get when you antagonize life and see life as the antagonist. You might be like, well, I don't see life as an antagonist, but you do. Because what's life? Life is the present moment. Life is this. Life is everything that is right now. And so if you look at it, you look at reality and say, nope, not good enough, don't like it, I'm trying to get away from it. That's what you get. You might say, well, I'm not trying to get away from it, I'm trying to change it. And that's fine, but again, the problem is if you're, what psychological place are you changing it from? For example, once again, say if I have Play-Doh and I make, say, I don't know, whatever, a carrot with, carrot shape out of Play-Doh, and I want to make a circle donut shape. Well, do I need to get rid of or get away from or be bothered by the carrot shape? No. If I'm upset in some way or unseated or decentered in some way by the original shape that I have, and suddenly I'm in an urgent place to make a donut, then I've cut myself off from myself. I've cut myself off from my deeper resources, from my deeper self. I'm in a reactive place. And you can still succeed, but you're likely to create suffering as you do. Actions that we take from an uncentered place tend to create suffering or chaos. Not necessarily a lot, but the extent to which you're off-center is the extent to which whatever actions you take will produce that kind of fruit. That's why it's so important to be at center. That's why being at center is everything. So you have hope for the future, which means you find the now to be unacceptable. You're not in acceptance of the now. So you have dreams and ambitions, and there's a certain period of time between you and there, and now you have a plan, you have a game plan, a strategy. And we're just on path A. I'm really thinking this through, right? I'm really trying to think about this. It's like, yeah, no, like if all you're doing is just trying to shape your reality and you're not in acceptance of reality as it is, it's like being in a dream where you're being chased by something and you're trying to strategize in the dream how to really successfully get away from the thing, but you can't get away from the thing because it's your dream. How do you find safety in your dream? Stop running, right? Stop running and look at the thing. Stop chasing. Here's another clue. This is important. If I say, should you give up on your dreams, and you feel a knee-jerk reaction that says no, notice that there's no law in the universe that says if you put down your dreams and ambitions, you can't pick them right back up. But there's a fear in us that feels like if we put it down for even a second, then that will be it. We'll lose them forever. And what if it's not that you wouldn't be able to, like your dreams and ambitions would just go away and you can't find them anymore, but really, you'll be disinclined to pick them back up Because up until now, you keep taking your wellness, your peace and your wholeness, put it in a ball, throw it into the future, and you go get it, and then throw it away and go get it again. Eventually, it's like, well, why am I separating myself from it? What if I could just merge with it? Be it. Usually at this point, I'd start talking about trust, how to trust that that all will be well, that you're safe to do this. But for me, the drive to move deep into this wellness, to release anything that would separate me from this wellness, is so strong. It's so incredibly strong. Like once you get a taste of it, right? If you're listening to this and you've had a distinct sense of this peace, then you know it's like, it's the only thing that matters. It's the only thing. It's the thing. And once you get a significant taste of it, the whole game changes. There's no longer, it just becomes so clear there's nothing anymore that you can look for outside of yourself that could really get you there, can really bring you home. And so at a certain point, the decision becomes really clear. I can either do this or not do this. I can either move through this doorway or stand outside it for the remainder of my life. What's on the other side of the door? I don't know. I can't say for sure. I can't take any of my safety blankets with me. Like every time I pass through these little thresholds, it's like I would love to take my books and my teachers and reassurances with me, and I can't. The door's only big enough just for me to pass through. Will I be motivated? Will I still want to do all the things I'm doing? I don't know. Let's find out. And then I find out, and here I am making this for you. And again, it's so strange. The drive is even stronger. It doesn't make sense that it would be the way it is. But this year, coming into this year, I'm more motivated than ever to make these videos. I just imagine a past version of myself confused along this path. It's like, okay, self-growth or self-diminishment? Success of the campaign of the self, succeeding in it, or abandoning the campaign of the self? Both? Can you do both? What's the priority? So piecing this out to help, at minimum, avoid the confusion, even if I can't accompany you through the door. What's the priority? What's the most important thing? What do you believe? I wrote this to my email list just recently, and it's really got me thinking. What do I believe? At the very bottom. And suppose that you didn't even have to explain yourself to anybody. Suppose you didn't have to justify or prove. So for example, do you believe in horoscopes? Obviously you don't talk to scientist types about your belief in horoscopes. You don't want to do that. They'll argue, right? They're always appalled. That's fine. If you believe in them, good. Good. What do you believe in? What is your deepest held belief? Mine is that through surrender and acceptance and dropping all sense of false identity and merging with the Tao, we find all the little pieces that we've been looking for. So what is it you want the most? Is it purpose? It's there. It's like a one-stop shop for all these things. Peace, it's there. Wisdom, wellness, it's there. The Tao is the provider of it. The Tao is the source of immediate satisfaction, immediate fulfillment. Nothing else is required in any future moment. Just imagine not needing anything to make you whole. Imagine reaching the very apex of your journey, the final cymbal crashing, trumpets blaring conclusion. You've arrived. You made it. You're there. You're there. And you go, great, what now? What now? How does the Tao move in you? That question is the answer to the question. The question being, what now? We answer that question with this question. How is the Tao moving in you? Is it moving any which way? No? Sit still. Drink some water. What does it want to express through you? A book? A business? It's a big no-no, I've learned in YouTube making, video making, to allow silence. So it's like, oh, silence is boring. And yet, the silence is the carrier of this message. The silence is that which indicates the pointlessness of our campaigning. The silence is respectful of the campaigning. Like anybody who has put down the campaign will look back at anybody who is still in their campaign with great respect, great understanding, great compassion. And not like compassion usually has this sort of like pejorative kind of like looking down on a person's sense. It's not that. It's like, no, man, I get it. I get the desire for a campaign, the meaning structure that it gives you. I know who I am. I know what I'm doing. But then looking back on it, the campaign is just training wheels on how to exist. And eventually you put the training wheels and you stand on your own 2 feet without needing something to do. Needing something to do is a toy. It's a distraction. It's a fidget spinner. Remember those? It's a really good metaphor for it. Right? And you spin it, you spin a fidget spinner, and it goes, it's like, oh, that's cool. Play with the G-force, and then it stops. Again, 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 again. Needing something to do. But the belief that you need something to do is just a belief. You don't need anything to do. You don't need anything. So this was fun. I hope you enjoyed it. I will continue to talk about productivity and how to self-actualize on a personal level. And it's funny because there's still outstanding stuff to look at. But I guess at the end of the day, it is really important to get organized, to get yourself together, to get your act in order, to convert chaos into order, to have tools and insights on how to do that. And so that'll be an important thing to talk about. So we'll continue to return to that. But this will be the priority. Thank you for watching.